Hello, everyone. My name is Ben, and I've recently walked through a personal hell I had never imagined possible. If someone had told me a year ago that my 20-year marriage would end because my wife cheated on me with our 18-year-old daughter's boyfriend, I would have thought they were out of their mind. But today, it's my harsh reality as I attempt to mend my broken life. Actually, our broken lives. Because my daughter is so devastated that there are no words to describe it. Let me start from the beginning so you can understand how everything unraveled. About a year ago, my daughter Emma, who had just turned 18 at the time, introduced us to her new boyfriend, Ryan. From the moment I met him, I didn't like him. He was a smooth-talking guy with a flashy smile. Something about him just didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the 2-year age gap that bothered me. It was his demeanor. Emma was convinced he was the one, but I saw him for what he was, a player. I voiced my concerns to my wife, Samantha. She agreed that Ryan seemed insincere and had a player vibe, but she reminded me that Emma was an adult now. "We can't control who she chooses to date, Ben," she said. "If we try to interfere too much, we might push her away." I realized she was right. It wasn't my decision to make. Reluctantly, I accepted the situation, hoping the relationship would fizzle out on its own. But things started getting weird quickly. Samantha works from home, so she's usually around the house during the day. One day, I came home early and heard giggling coming from the living room. From the hallway, I overheard Ryan say to Samantha, "You look extremely hot in these photos. If I didn't know you were 40, I'd guess you're 22. That was the last straw. I stepped into the living room. There they were, Samantha and Ryan sitting unusually close on the couch, giggling. Emma was on Ryan's other side, looking visibly upset. "What the heck is going on here?" I demanded. Samantha looked up with a laugh. "Oh, hey, honey. We're just looking at some family photos," she said nonchalantly. I noticed Emma glaring at her mother. "Why is Emma upset?" I asked. Samantha waved it off, saying, "She's making a mountain out of a molehill." Emma couldn't hold back any longer. "You're flirting with my boyfriend and you think it's nothing? I hate you," she shouted before rushing to her room. Ryan remained seated beside Samantha until I told him, "Maybe you should talk to Emma or head home." He chose to leave. That infuriated me even more. Clearly, my daughter wasn't his priority. I confronted Samantha. "Why aren't you working, and why are you flirting with Emma's boyfriend?" She laughed and said, "It's kind of hot seeing you jealous of him. If you haven't noticed, he is way too young for me." She leaned in and whispered, "I was trying to show Emma that Ryan is a ladies' man, but I didn't expect her to get mad at me instead of him." It made a twisted kind of sense. She added, "Your little jealousy episode is quite the turn-on. One thing led to another, and we ended up getting intimate right there in the living room. I must admit that all my doubts faded away." A couple of weeks later, I walked into the kitchen to find Samantha and Ryan engaged in a playful food fight. Flour was everywhere, and they were laughing like old friends. Emma was nowhere to be seen. "What's going on here?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. Samantha grinned. "Just baking some cookies for Emma. Ryan here wanted to surprise her but didn't have enough skills." Ryan smirked but didn't say anything. I felt a knot in my stomach but brushed it off, hoping I was overreacting. That evening, Emma came to me, her eyes filled with worry. "Dad, Mom is still flirting with Ryan. I'm scared something is going on between them." "Why won't you do anything?" she pleaded. I wanted to believe that Samantha would never cross that line. "Emma, I'm sure it's nothing. Your mother loves you and would never hurt you like that," I tried to reassure her. But she wasn't convinced. "You're just ignoring the problem," she exclaimed before leaving the room. A couple of weeks later, Emma came to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I saw Mom and Ryan flirting again. This time they kissed." My heart sank. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, hoping she was mistaken. "Yes, I saw it with my own eyes in the kitchen. They were laughing, and then they kissed," she insisted. I didn't want to believe it. "Emma, maybe you misinterpreted what you saw. Your mother would never do that," I tried to reassure her. She looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. "Why won't you believe me? I'm not making this up." Despite my reservations, I decided to confront Samantha. "Emma says she saw you and Ryan kissing. What's going on?" I asked. Samantha rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. She's overreacting. "You know how she can be," she said dismissively. "Are you saying she's lying?" I pressed. "I'm saying she's making a big deal out of nothing. I was just teasing Ryan to show Emma his true colors. Yes, he tried to kiss me, but I turned my head away," Samantha replied, brushing it off. I wanted to believe her, so I let it go, thinking perhaps Emma was mistaken or misinterpreting the situation. One day I returned home earlier than expected from a business trip. The house was eerily quiet. As I headed upstairs, I heard muffled voices and soft laughter coming from our bedroom. My heart pounded as I opened the door. There they were, Samantha and Ryan, together in the most intimate way. I couldn't believe my eyes. "What is this?" I shouted. They scrambled to cover themselves. Rage consumed me. Without thinking, I punched Ryan square in the face. "Get out of my house," I yelled. He grabbed his clothes and bolted downstairs. Samantha tried to reach out to me. "Ben, please let me explain," she cried. I was seething. "Pack your things and get out," I said coldly. Just then, Emma walked in through the front door. She saw Ryan rushing out, clutching his eye, and then saw me throwing her mother's dress down the stairs, the dress I had recently bought for Samantha. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, her voice quivering. I looked at her, tears welling up in my eyes. "You were right, Emma. I caught your mother and Ryan together." She stood there stunned. Then, with a resolve I didn't expect, she marched upstairs straight to Samantha, slapped her on the cheek, and said, "You're not my mother anymore. I never want to see you again." After that, she began helping me pack Samantha's belongings. Samantha moved in with Ryan, a choice that ignited a wildfire of gossip throughout our small town. News traveled fast, faster than I could have imagined. Neighbors who once waved warmly now averted their eyes or offered pitying looks. Conversations hushed as Emma and I walked by, only to resume in whispered tones that felt like daggers in our backs. Samantha's actions became the centerpiece of every social gathering, from the local cafe to the church's Sunday potluck. The scandal was too sensational for people to resist. Some of Emma's friends began to distance themselves, afraid her mother might steal their boyfriends as well. The weight of the gossip and isolation took a heavy toll on Emma. She withdrew from the world, her laughter silenced, and her vibrant spirit dimmed. It was as if the light inside her had been switched off. Watching her suffer was unbearable. It felt like my heart was breaking all over again each day. Realizing that we couldn't navigate this storm alone, I decided to seek professional help. We began attending therapy sessions with a compassionate psychologist who provided a safe space for us to express our pain and begin the healing process. Through individual and joint sessions, we started to unpack the complex emotions that overwhelmed us. As for me, I felt like a mere shadow of my former self. Sleepless nights and endless days blurred together as I grappled with feelings of anger, betrayal, and helplessness. Therapy became a lifeline, a place where I could confront my emotions without judgment. It didn't offer an immediate fix, but it was a step toward rebuilding our fractured lives. Emma and I slowly started to piece ourselves back together. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead was long, but with each passing day, we found small reasons to hope. The whispers in town began to fade, or perhaps we just stopped listening. What mattered was that we were moving forward, side by side, determined to overcome the shadows of the past. 6 months had passed, and Emma and I were beginning to heal. Feeling it was time to move forward completely, I decided to file for divorce now that I finally had the energy to deal with it. It didn't take long for Samantha to call me. She said she was willing to sign the divorce papers, but wanted to meet first to part amicably. She also hoped I could encourage Emma to speak with her. Call me naive, but I agreed to meet her and even invited her to our home while Emma was on a trip with friends. We sat down over a bottle of wine, reminiscing about the good times we shared during our 20-year marriage. "Remember our first apartment? How we could barely afford furniture but were so happy?" she said with a nostalgic smile. "Yeah, those were simpler times," I admitted. The warmth of old memories washed over us. The nostalgia was intoxicating. One thing led to another, and we ended up in bed. Afterward, she dressed and said she needed to go back to Ryan's place to sort things out. A wave of regret washed over me. I felt like a fool. Not only had I betrayed my own healing process, but I also risked reopening wounds for Emma. Days turned into weeks, and Samantha still hadn't signed the divorce papers. I felt like I was moving backward instead of forward, undoing the healing Emma and I had begun. I didn't tell Emma about Samantha's visit or how things ended that night. I tried to act normal, but Samantha didn't make it easy. She started messaging me almost every night, likely when Ryan was asleep. "I miss you," she'd write. She told me how badly Ryan was treating her and expressed deep regret for all the pain she had caused me and Emma. "If you can forgive me, I'd choose you without hesitation. You're my soulmate and I love you more than anything," she pleaded. I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her. I naively hoped that maybe we could fix things and rebuild our family. Suddenly, a month later, Samantha dropped another bombshell. "Ryan kicked me out because I'm pregnant," she told me over the phone. My heart skipped a beat. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. "It's yours, you know it," she replied. "This could be our second chance, Ben." I was skeptical but couldn't ignore the possibility. "We need to do a paternity test," I insisted. Samantha tried to convince me not to go down that path, but she finally agreed. At this point, I wasn't so naive anymore. I felt she was trying to use me, knowing that Ryan wouldn't help raise the child. Still, deep down, I really wished that this kid was mine. When the results came back, they confirmed the harsh truth. I was not the father. It was clear she had tried to deceive me into staying with her. I even suspected that she was already pregnant when we were together. But she still begged for my forgiveness. "You're the love of my life, and I don't want to lose you forever," she implored. But how could she expect me to forgive such a betrayal? Did she ever think about Emma and her feelings now that she's expecting her ex-boyfriend's child, who is now also her half-brother? It can't be more complicated than this. Emma also heard that Ryan had gotten her mother pregnant and then abandoned her. I knew that if I took Samantha back, Emma would never speak to either of us again. At this point, my daughter was the most important person in my life. I told Samantha that even if I could forgive her someday, it was impossible for us to be together. The trauma she had caused me and our daughter was beyond words. I begged her to sign the divorce papers, and she finally did. Now she's living alone, preparing to raise the child by herself. We still talk occasionally because she wants to know how Emma is doing. They still don't communicate, and I don't know if they ever will. Looking back, I realized there were crucial moments when I should have acted differently. I should have listened to Emma from the very beginning and trusted her instincts about Ryan and Samantha's flirting. By ignoring the warning signs and failing to set firm boundaries, I allowed that smooth-talking clown to remain in our lives. If I had forbidden him from entering our home, perhaps our family would still be together today, and all this trauma could have been avoided. I also regret rekindling things with Samantha after our breakup. Sleeping with her again only made it harder for me to move on. Despite everything, I still believe that Samantha was the love of my life, and it deeply hurts what she did to us. I have learned the hard way that sometimes love just isn't enough. Divorcing her was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it was necessary, especially for Emma's sake. She must know that at least one parent will never let her down. To anyone facing a similar situation, I suggest trusting your instincts and not hesitating to take action when something feels wrong. It's better to confront uncomfortable truths early than to deal with the fallout later. And honestly, I hope you never go through something like this. But if you do, know that healing is possible, even from the deepest pain.